Hello, lovelies. Please excuse this very unprofessional video as I'm on my evening walk and staring straight into the sun. I've had a lot of things to say lately, and then I don't record them, and then I forget, and then it's been weeks. And so I'm just going to do this instead. I've been working with a couple of clients recently who are all struggling with setting and maintaining boundaries around work. And I've been thinking about it a lot because it's kind of multiple people at the same time, and sometimes I just startle the dove. Sometimes that happens where a little library. I can't turn down books. I get distracted. Sometimes it happens where a bunch of things kind of happen in your life simultaneously, and it makes you think a little bit more deeply in the subject. And I keep meaning to write a blog post on this, and it's probably just not going to happen anytime soon. So enjoy this ramble instead. Basically, I think that autistic people who, possibly just in general, but especially late identified autistic people, struggle with boundary setting because of our long time masking and long time trying to compromise ourselves, our behaviors, our traits, the way we speak, the way we move. We compromise all of that from a young age to fit in better with the neurotypical population and neurotypical expectations, right? And I feel like even if you're new to your autistic self and to that realization, a lot of us still have this sort of inkling that masking has damaged us in ways that we don't totally understand. But I think that one of the ways that it really damages us that doesn't get maybe enough airtime is this idea that because we are masking so hard since childhood, our own internal values, the things that we think are the most important aspects of the world and traits and behavior characteristics, our most important values are subverted into what we think the most important values are for a neurotypical version of ourselves. So, for example, a lot of autistic folks, a lot of neurotypicals too, but a lot of us really value honesty, transparency, right? But we know that many neurotypical folks have different expectations around honesty and transparency than we do, right? For example, politeness comes in on top of honesty sometimes for neurotypical folks. So you can't just be straight up blunt, especially in certain parts of the country. Instead, you have to couch what you're saying in politeness norms to maintain social expectations. So you can't just say, I'm really unhappy with the way you're speaking to me right now, and it doesn't feel respectful to some people sometimes. Instead, you have to say, either you can't say that at all, or you have to say it multiple times over multiple instances and kind of build up to it, or you have to say something kind of passive aggressive instead of just straight out saying, I don't like how you're talking to me. And I think that especially for maybe non-man presenting autistics, for those of us who are socialized as women, it's even harder, right? When you have a value of honesty, to come straight out and be like, I'm going to be straight up honest with you, right? In a way that's not rude, but is very blunt, right? So this is a way that we're trained out of an autistic, sorry for the traffic noise, we're trained out of our autistic set of values pretty early, and instead trained into neurotypical values. And at work, this becomes even more challenging because you're in a highly volatile, sometimes environment, sorry for the sun glare, where you need to play it right to make that money and keep your job. So there's a lot of stress and anxiety associated with work. And with keeping the status quo going, that there isn't maybe in other portions of your life, in other parts of your life. And so you have to mask even harder at work sometimes And that means subverting your own values even more. And that means that it's really hard to even know what the heck your values are if you've been masking since you were a tiny child and implementing other people's values instead of your own. And then at work, when you're trying to figure out when to say something, how to say something, who to say it to, like you're struggling under multiple layers of subversion at that point, right? So of course it's really hard for autistic people to set reasonable boundaries around work and around our bosses and around our coworkers when we don't know what our own values even are. We're indoctrinated to represent other people's values over our own. And that creates just this extra layer of confusion about like, what is even reasonable to ask for? What is reasonable to expect from your coworker or your boss or your manager or your company or your HR? Anyway, I just kind of wanted to put this out there. I know this is rambling and there's not necessarily a single point to it, but what I guess I'm trying to get at is it's reasonable to have trouble whether you're newly identifying as autistic or not, whether you're woman presenting or not, whether you're working in a traditional office environment or not either, that it's reasonable to be struggling with boundaries over work. It makes sense that you are struggling with boundaries over work. Lots of people, just like you, are struggling with boundaries over work too. And with boundaries in general, not just work, but like work is what I've been thinking about lately because I've been working with clients who are specifically struggling in the kind of work, mostly office environment. But I've also worked with plenty of people and dealt with myself, figuring out what my boundaries even are in my personal life, in my relationships with my friends, with my family, with coworkers, like in all sorts of arenas. And that's because boundaries come from your values. And we don't know what our values are. And it takes us a lot of work as adults to reestablish what the heck our values even are, because they weren't prioritized for us as kids. We weren't allowed to uphold them as children. And we're having to do all this extra work as adults to like re-find them, rediscover them, re-identify them, and then to put those values into the space in our lives where they should have been the whole time. So yeah, I just want to kind of validate that for you and say, if you're going through this in any facet of your life, it's normal. You're not doing anything wrong. You've been kind of done a disservice as a child in not being able to identify your own values and not having support around you to place your values and your boundaries as you should have been able to. And you're not alone in that. So I would love to know your thoughts, if this rings true to you or not, what I've missed. This is a rambling thing. I'm sure I've missed lots of things. And also just let me put in a last minute plug. If you're interested in the Neurodiverging Podcast, we started new episodes last week. They come out every 2 weeks on Thursday. And also, if you like coaching resources, I have coaching slots open if you want me to be your coach. But also, if you like just do-it-yourself resources, there are some tiers on my Patreon. You could support the Neurodiverging Podcast and also get cool coaching resources like how to find your values and how to enact your values so that maybe you can work yourself out of some of this trouble and difficulty. I just saw an owl in a tree, so I'm going to turn this off and take a video of the owl now.